if I may invite everyone to be seated, we can begin our event today. We still have some guests coming in. Please. Thank you. Now that everyone's seated, again, good morning and welcome back. This is day 3 of our Policymakers Workshop. And may I say, what a wonderful 2 days it has been the past few days, and we're getting comments from both the Sri Lankan and Egyptian delegations. Could I just briefly go through what we had yesterday? We did a trip to our UKM Technology Development Center, where you saw one of our companies, OSA Technology. I think the questions that they got and they fed back to us, they were very happy that we were so interested in the technology and the processes. And after lunch at UPM, we went to Nilai, to one of our funded companies, MyTech, and that was quite an interesting tour as well. Now, this is one thing that wasn't on the plan yesterday that I'm very happy to share with you. I think over the 2 days, both delegations have been gathering so much information that both the Egyptian and the Sri Lankan have come to me and say that we don't want to miss this opportunity. We don't want to, just absorb all this information and forget about it. Could we have a session where we could sit down amongst ourselves and discuss the issues and challenges specific to our countries, as well as what opportunities are there to work with Malaysians. So this is also some news for our team. What happened when we returned from Nilai yesterday about 6 p.m. We had 2 rooms prepared, one for the Sri Lankans and one for the Egyptians. And originally it was like everyone's really tired, it's been 2 long days, we have maybe 50 minutes of discussion and then we'll go for a dinner or swimming. What ended up happening was each delegation went on for several hours, just churning out what the issues that they were interested in. And I think that could be a kick-off point, a really good kick-off point for today's workshop. Now, this is called the MTDC Policymakers Workshop, but first day was mainly seminar, yesterday was business trip. Today, the final day, is really where all the action is. Now, if I may run through today's schedule, we are going to begin with our CEO, Norhalim Yunus. He's going to be working on giving a presentation on technology development and commercialization initiatives in Malaysia. So I'll be calling him up front shortly to kindly kickstart the day. After which, we will break up into groups for thematic discussions. Now, originally we were thinking we could go about this several ways. It could be 2 groups according to the countries, or we could mix it up. And again, we're still leaving that up to you, but given the interest yesterday to discuss country-specific themes, I'm guessing that's the direction we're going in terms of the groups, or the most logical way. After that, we'll have our lunch, and when we return from lunch, the groups will then present whatever the deliberations are, and our facilitators, which also includes Dr. Fatima from the first day, if you remember, would comment on that, and hopefully we can come up to some resolution. And then that's the end of our workshop. But not the end of our activities, because this evening we'll be heading to Sri Melayu Restaurant for a cultural show. So I'm just saying this in advance for all of you to be at the lobby by 7:15 p.m. And I think that's a really nice way to end our 3 days together. Now, if I may, I would like to invite Norhalim Yunus, our CEO of MTDC, to the front to begin the presentation. And if I may introduce him, he is the Chief Executive Officer of Malaysian Technology Development Corporation, which is a venture capital company wholly owned by Khazanah Nasional, as most of you would know by now. Norhalim has been involved with projects in technology transfer, commercialization, and startup companies since he joined MTDC in 1993. He sits on the board of several MTDC investee companies in Malaysia as well as in the US, including Globetronics Berhad, Primera DX, Abundant Nutrition Incorporated. And finally, Norhalim is a biologist by training, so I know some of you would really take to him in terms of questions and whatnot. So again, I invite Norhalim to the front. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to be on the stage because there's another thing that I don't really particularly like. What I'm going to do this morning is, I think I look at the program, and most of the presentations, I think, are very high level, maybe 30,000 feet up in the sky, in terms of the how you would look at policy for commercialization, research, and technology. Now, what I intend to do this morning is just to walk through a bit on MTDC per se. Okay, and this morning we're going to walk. I'm going to share with you a little bit on MTDC per se. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that we'll share a bit of history of MTDC, because both leading organization here, which is NEDA, and also ASRP, we started our collaboration between Malaysia and Egypt, and Malaysia and Sri Lanka, based on our respective collaboration with MTDC and the respective agencies. Now, I think one of the most important things when we talk about commercialization is we really need to address the issue of pain. Now, when we want to commercialize a product, we want to see what the market pain is, right? We want to see actually what are the pains that we are addressing. So if you have a technology product, we want to go to the market and we see actually what pains in the market that we are actually solving. But sometimes when we do policy, we actually don't really look at in details of what actually are the pain that we're trying to solve. Now, this is, for example, MTDC itself. When we were formed in 1992, the pain which the government thought they want to solve was, how do we move research results from the lab to the industry? That's a very realistic description of the pain. The pain of moving a product from the lab to the market. Okay? But the next step is actually, how do you solve this pain? What is your solution? If you read Rob Adams, I think you should read Rob Adams, The Good Heart Keep on the S. Sorry, but that's the title. Okay. Okay, now we have introduced the concept of addressing the pain. So the solution normally will say, is it cheaper? Is it better? Is it faster? That's from the product perspective. But if you were to look at commercialization of research from a policy perspective, you look at all these research results in the lab, and then you see there is a problem of bringing these research results to the market. And there is a pain that needs to be addressed. How do you solve that? So 20 years ago, the government thought that, okay, let's form an agency to address this pain. Okay, let's look around and see what people are doing. So the government looked around and said, okay, the Korean model looks interesting. Why don't we form a company which is something along the Korean model? So MTDC was formed. MTDC was formed as a venture capital company because the government thought that a venture capital company will be the solver, the solution to the pain. Okay? So what is the pain? The pain is how to bring product from the lab to the market. What is the solution? Let's form a venture capital company. Okay? This is quite similar to sometimes in a different world when researchers come to you and say, Mr. Anwar, I have a technology that will rule the world. It is better, cheaper, faster. The market is 1 billion. If we get 1%, both of us will be very rich. Right? That is how normally we look at our perception of the pain in the market and our solution. So in this case, when we formed MTDC, we thought that, okay, there is a problem of moving research results from the lab to the market. How do we assist universities, research institutes, moving their products from the lab to the market? What is the problem? The problem is financial. At that point in time, I'm talking about 20 years ago when we have not actually enough experience on commercialization. So we thought that these challenges can be addressed by creating a venture capital company. So what is the underlying idea here? The underlying idea here is that commercialization is mainly about financing the project. Correct? Because you have a product, if you provide money, it will be commercialized. Okay, that was the idea 20 years ago. And I think there are also still these ideas now prevalent in a lot of policy-making bodies. Where the issue to commercialization is, among others, the issue of financing, among others. Now, but actually, if you look at commercialization ecosystem, and I'm not sure whether you have seen these slides, but there are other slides also. Oh, there's another one. Yeah, it's difficult to follow Steve Jobs. Is it okay? Right. So, now I'm not sure whether you have seen this slide by Dan Eisenberg, but there are many other slides similar to this nature. If you want to look at the entrepreneurship ecosystem, which is actually the ecosystem where the entrepreneurs operate, and the ecosystem where commercialization takes place, then you can see actually that finance here is just one of the solutions to the pain. By providing money to entrepreneurs is only a very small solution to the pain of commercialization. And if we are not cognizant of the point, then we will have a lot of problem when we want to do commercialization of research. Okay, let's forget this slide for the moment because it's going to be very complex and this will take several days to talk about it. Let's go back to this issue of commercialization. Okay, oops. So MTDC was formed in 1992, about 20 years ago, and it started operations around October 1992. And the idea was then to be the agency for commercialization of public sector research. Now, bear in mind here, when we talk about commercialization of research 20 years ago, we think that the issue is the commercialization of public sector research. But now, 20 years down the road, in fact, somewhere in the middle of our journey, we changed that to commercialization of research. Because there is no point to talk about commercialization of public sector research if we also do not have policy in place to support commercialization of private sector research. Okay? But 20 years ago, well, you know, I was young also at that point in time. We only, hi Sally, how are you? We were only focusing on commercialization of public sector research. So what I'm trying to say here is that at 38,000 feet level, you're looking down, everything looks beautiful, right? The moon looks very beautiful at night. You go at 10,000 feet, it doesn't look that beautiful anymore with all kinds of craters. So here, you know, you look at the commercialization landscape, we think that, okay, let's form a venture capital company to fund early stage commercialization of public sector research. Very, very narrow and very, very specific. What are the problems here? The problem is that as you look at the ecosystem diagram just now, financing is just a small part, a very, 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 very small part of the whole ecosystem. Okay? Here. Financing is just a very small part of the ecosystem. Now, when we were formed as a venture capital company in 1992, we were the only venture capital company doing early stage investment. A lot of people sometimes believe that first movers have the advantage, okay? But actually, most of the time, that's not exactly true. If you are the first mover in any field, sometimes you have to do a lot more work. And by the time you have done everything, the second place person will just overtake you. Okay? Let's say, look at here. Let's say you want to, some of you, in fact, I always, I've also presented this to Sri Lankan in Egypt as well. A lot of us in developing world like to look at Silicon Valley and say, well, look, it's VC, why don't we do VC? Right? If you do VC, we solve the financing issues. But VC is not a miraculous solution. It does not solve this pain of commercialization on its own. Why? Because you need to have other things as well for the VC to be successful. Number one, which MTDC found out very, very early in our life. We were in operation in October 1992, and we were supposed to do early stage investment. By October 1993, we changed the business model. Why is that? Lesson number one, it is very easy to plan. We plan for our children, we think that it's a beautiful plan. The children look at us and say, no, that's not a very good plan. It's very easy to plan. And for policymakers, it's much more easier because what we say people listen to, right? So it is easy to plan and say that let's form a venture capital company, and venture capital company we do early stage. What was the mistake with MTDC? The mistake was that MTDC was formed as a VC, but it is supposed to invest using its shareholders fund. We were created in 1992, and we were given about 55 million to invest in early stage investment. Sorry. So many slides here. Okay, so MTDC was formed in 1992. We were supposed to do early stage investment. But 5 months down the road, we found out that we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. Where is the Arthur C. Clarke Institute just now? Okay, right? Go on. Okay. It's a very good name for an institute. What is the problem? The problem in venture capital is, number one, for it to be successful, and I think you all have to look at your situation in your respective countries and see whether this is the same. Number one, venture capital will work in markets where, first, there are companies being created every day which addresses a very high growth market. Why high growth? Because venture capital model needs quick exit within 10 years. If the market that are existing or the market that the companies are targeting are not high growth, are not large enough, and you don't have a mechanism where companies can go to an IPO without a profit track record, or we don't have an existing situation where M&A occurs on a frequent basis, the venture capital model will not work very well. Because this is what MTDC found out. If I were to put the money in a startup company today, 1st of December, and the company does not, I cannot exit by 10 years from now, the venture capital model will be broken. I will not have money to continue my operation. So the normal venture capital model is on a 10-year period. Investment from the 1st to the 4th year, and exit from any time from the 5th to the 10th year. By the 10th year, the fund is closed. So what does this imply? It implies that the company must be high growth and it has an exit opportunity either through IPO or through M&A. If we don't have M&A, which MTDC at 1993, we do not have a good, attractive M&A situation. You don't hear large companies buying tech companies 20 years ago in Malaysia. You don't have a tech board 20 years ago in Malaysia. You don't have the number of deal flows. Okay? In the US, our partners look at 1,000 deal or 1 deal, meaning 1 in 1,000. In Malaysia, we look at 10 and we invest in 1. That's a problem. Why? Because the higher number of deals usually will give you higher chances of choosing the best ones. The lower number of deals definition. Okay? You are not investing because you want to create jobs. Okay? You're not going to go to a VC in the US and their KPI is you're going to invest so that you can create jobs. You know, a VC is the most expensive source of fund for any entrepreneur. The most. It expects an internal rate of return of 20, 25 up to 40%. Therefore, venture capital is the most expensive source of fund. But government-backed venture capital, and this is what Malaysia has done, Singapore has done, and a few other countries has done. Besides making money, it has other objectives. Assist in commercialization of public sector research. Develop companies so that jobs will be created. Okay? Create companies who later can go to the export market. So this is all challenges that you will not be able to do if you do not have the four things that I mentioned just now, which I think you may want to consider in terms of your policy deliberations, whether do you need a government VC or not? First question. Second question, if you need a government VC, which sector of the industries have already reached a stage where the VC can operate? Okay? Maybe it is in agriculture, maybe it is in life sciences, maybe it is in agriculture biotech, maybe it is in ICT. But venture capital cannot be jack of all trades. It has to focus on a sector which has high growth, high number of deal flows, meaning companies are being created on a daily basis, and the industry that they are targeting is high growth, and they can have an exit either locally or overseas. So that's what venture capital is all about. So if you want to consider venture capital as a policy instrument, I think these are issues that you have to consider. Okay? For us, we will form in, as I said, we were operational in October 1992. By October 1993, we changed our business model. And this is why I was informed by people who would listen to me, and actually there are other people in the US who make a statement anyway, that the business plan is as good as the piece of paper that you write it on. Right? Because it is good to write a business plan to clarify, to have clarity to your plan. But a business plan is not, or as the Quran, it's not, you can't change. The business plan is what you write today to get clarity of ideas. The moment you enter the market, then you have to change. So what we have done was that by 1993, we went back to our board and we said, we will not be able to survive if we just do early stage investment. Why? Not enough deal flows. Two, companies do not have exit opportunities within the short term. And three, we were investing, and this was our fatal mistake actually, we were investing using our own shareholders' fund. Venture capital should manage and invest using a fund outside their shareholders' money. So by 1993, we changed the model and said, no, we're not just going to do early stage investment, we are going to do investment across the continuum. Early stage, expansion stage, mezzanine stage. So that's what has happened in MTDC. We changed the model. We said, okay, let's go and do other things to support the commercialization ecosystem. Okay, so I will go back here now. Is there any question on the VC? Any question on VC model? Anybody thinking of starting a VC? Yes?
You mentioned it in the VC part as government VC.
Right.
I would imagine that private VCs would be the same.
Yes.
Same problems, same issues, and same expectations of the VC as well.
Right.
Now, for an entrepreneur, doesn't it serve well that he needs to prepare something for a body as aggressive as a VC versus a bank, for example? I mean, how would you compare both?
Right.
You mentioned that the VC is one of the most expensive.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Of course, that's 100% correct. Almost all over the world.
Right.
So how about banks? They have a requirement, a due diligence process and so on.
Yes.
How would you?
Okay, I will address that later. The only thing that I would like to, the question is about venture capital